Good morning, and welcome to the Department of Transportation. Welcome to Washington, D.C. We are so glad that you're here. And I want to thank you for the commitment that brought you here, and I want to thank you in advance for all of the work that you're going to be doing here and taking back to your communities. This is something we've been building up toward and looking forward to for a very long time. I want to recognize and thank also my friend Mitch Landrieu, who you just heard from, who's doing such great work at the White House to coordinate all of the different pieces of the President's infrastructure vision. And I want to recognize some of my DOT colleagues that you'll be spending time with. Shaylin Bott, who oversees our Federal Highway Administration. Veronica Vanterpool with our Federal Transit Administration. Linda Tran, who you just saw and will be seeing a lot of here. And Maria Zimmerman, who is a powerhouse when it comes to technical assistance, which is, of course, at the heart of what we're doing in this Thriving Communities gathering. I remember what it felt like to come into this building for the first time as the mayor of a city with a per capita income of about $19,000, a population that was substantially less than it was in its heyday, a big vision for what our transportation future might look like, but nothing even resembling a federal government relations staff. And just because we had a lot of smart, great, motivated people didn't mean that we were automatically prepared to handle federal investments or federal support. But then that question was a little bit academic anyway, because back then there was not a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill going on. I kind of wonder what it would have been like back when I was mayor if that were going on. But just because an infrastructure law is passed doesn't mean it is automatically going to benefit the communities that most need the support. In fact, the historical pattern in this country has been something quite different, which is that infrastructure investments have frequently served to reinforce inequality. If they are not done the right way, they make those who are better off still better off while leaving those who are behind even further behind. We are determined to do it differently and better this time. The very fact of the infrastructure law is a modern political miracle. Doing anything bipartisan in this town is not something that happens every day. And so it is a fact of great pride that 2 years ago, President Biden signed that bill on the South Lawn of the White House after a year of beating back the negativity and the naysayers who thought there's no way you could get this done. After reading the articles, and I read them, about how this infrastructure bill was not going to happen, it got done. But now we've got to make sure the American people actually experience $1.2 trillion of value out of all of that taxpayer funding that is being committed to these transportation projects across the country. The 40,000 infrastructure projects across the country that Mayor Landrieu mentioned. We're excited about the scale of this and the scope of this, whether we're talking about the clean American-made buses, the 190 airport terminals that we're upgrading, the 21 million families so far that are being identified getting connected to affordable high-speed internet, of course all the roads and bridges and trains and tunnels and things that are our bread and butter here at the DOT. But we know that we will have failed. Even if all of that money does in fact go out the door at the pace that we have aimed to, we will have failed if it doesn't reach the places where it can do the most good. And sometimes the places where it can do the most good are those that will not be ready without support from each other, and I'm coming back to that in a moment, and without support at the federal level and from nonprofit partners to build the kind of what I would call the plumbing that all of this funding is going to move through, and to make sure communities are engaged in shaping these transportation projects so that they know and feel that they are being done with them and for them and not to them. And I can sense that the practitioners who are here live and breathe those questions and those issues in your communities. Technical assistance probably is not the most glamorous term, even by the standards of government activities. But it's going to be the key for so many of these projects and the difference between them succeeding or not. And in order for that technical assistance to work, technical expertise needs to be married up with the community expertise that our community partners bring, whether it's faith leaders, organized labor, chambers of commerce, small businesses, local community groups, elected officials, transportation planners, all working together, especially because we know the transformative power of federal funding for low-income communities and historically excluded communities. We're working very hard to make sure that the application process itself should never be a barrier to resources, that it will find the most deserving projects and fund them. And we've got more funding than ever, thanks to President Biden's legislation to do it with. But I know how complicated it can be to navigate those processes. So we are aiming our attention at communities where we know there will be a lot of bang for the federal taxpayer buck and a lot of impact. I'll name just a few. Rexburg, community of 40,000 people in eastern Idaho, just a few hours away from Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and has faced a number of challenges related to growth and development. Rapid growth sounds like a great problem to have, but if your infrastructure can't support it, you know the challenges that can create. There's no shortage of good ideas and visions about adding sidewalks and extending trails and bike lanes, building up a transit system, but it's a small community that on day one isn't going to have even the resources to get the resources, because we know it can be expensive to get dollars from the federal government. Places like that are why Thriving Communities exists. Nobody understands the community's challenges more than the people who live there. What we need to do is marry that with our understanding of how to navigate our processes and get your feedback on how to make those processes easier to navigate in the first place. I'm looking at our Assistant Secretary, Christopher Coase, who is leading so much of this work on how we ingest the experiences you're having and turn them into better federal processes. And we're seeing that start to happen. Some more examples I would share with you. This summer, we awarded $25 million to the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe in Washington through the RAISE program to build a new road into and out of that area that will improve connectivity and provide an emergency route that's much needed and enhance tourism. In Cedartown, Georgia, in Decatur, Illinois, in Brockton, Massachusetts, we were able to get grants out from our Safe Streets and Roads for All program. I'm so excited about these. I know that by the standards of $1 billion railroad tunnel, a 6-figure safety grant may not grab national headlines, but it is going to help us confront a crisis in roadway deaths in this country that we are experiencing one phone call with bad news at a time. And we're going to confront that challenge through the creativity of communities designing better and safer streets. And Baltimore got a $2 million planning grant through our Reconnecting Communities program to look at ways to improve safety and access to opportunity by removing or repurposing a stretch of road that is notoriously known as the Highway to Nowhere, which divided historically black communities on the city's west side. All of those examples are part of the Thriving Communities family. So what I most want you to know is that you're not in this alone, that you have allies here in the Department of Transportation, across the Biden-Harris administration, where we're working with the Department of Health and Human Services, attuned to the relationship between health and transportation, so they've joined the Thriving Communities Network. We're working with agriculture, housing and urban development, commerce, energy, EPA, General Services Administration. Many of you are from the kinds of communities where people wear a lot of different hats, where it's not possible for the person who handles planning not to know what's going on with the person who handles public health. In fact, it's often the same person. That person might just be you. Federal government doesn't always work that way. It is a big and sprawling enterprise, but we're trying to have that same mentality to look at things like housing and transportation at the same time, because a low-income family doesn't get to pay for transportation one month and then worry about paying for housing a different month. We live these things integrated, and so do you. And we're working to make sure the federal government reflects that. The other thing, and the last thing I want to say, after again emphasizing just how much we are rooting for you and how committed we are to make sure you succeed, not just by getting a grant, but by navigating that process and seeing it through, is the best part of all of this is going to be each other. We're proud of the relationships we're forming with you, but the community of practice you are forming as the inaugural cohort, the first time we've ever done something like this, Thriving Communities Vision, is going to be the most important thing of all, because you will be able to compare notes on what's working. You will be able to form a consensus on things that we need to do more of. You will be able to notice when something seems a little off with our processes, and it's not just you because you talk to another community, and then you can tell us, and then we can help. You will be able to support each other through those tough times. I've been through enough public meetings to know that sometimes you just need a little moral support from friends who face similar expressions of democracy in their backyards. And think about how to make sure that you're responsive to communities and holding on to that vision. You're going to build each other up in a way that will make, I think, the community that is being formed right here probably the best output of all of this entire effort. So for that reason and all the others I mentioned, we are again so glad that you're here. We are deeply committed to this vision, this program, to your success. And with some luck, I hope I'll have a chance to see some of the work that you're doing on the ground in your communities. Thank you again, and welcome again to the Department of Transportation. Thanks.